that you should also know well because he's been in our programs before, but he's worth having as many times as we can get him in here, and that's Tim Desmond.
Hi, you're so kind. Thank you.
I know that you've got a book out that we talked about before, and it's out.
Right. It wasn't released the last time I was here, and I did that talk about that Confederate flag.
Oh yes.
And about the blue, nobody thinks it's a Confederate flag, and but I had I brought a show and tell, and I was explaining it, and it is on the cover. So.
Oh, good. So.
But this, I don't know if can they see this.
I think so.
So here's the cover, and
what if we just put it
and
like this a little
there's
bit?
a guy.
There we go.
There's the guys in the van going to a battle scene, and they're flying the Confederate flag on a pole outside the right window. But that's the same flag that. Actually, it's the same flag that was photographed that the cover art guy used. So, but it was released after we last talked. So,
well, I know you had some interesting things that leading into your book today.
Yes, well, this is a sequel to the original Doc story, and I talked a lot about that more than one time, I believe, on the show in the past. So I came into reading Michael Connelly crime novels late. I never read one until after I saw his the story that was televised called The Lincoln Lawyer.
Oh,
but he had his first book out in '93, and he's still going, So I happened to pick up paperbacks by him. One of them was in 2007 publication, and the title of it is The Overview. Now Michael Connelly's Harry Bosch character, he's always in trouble either with his bosses, with LAPD, or the feds that are brought in on a case to work with him and stuff. And that's kind of typical of what his problem was in the Overview book. But the Overview book was about some cesium being stolen out of a hospital-grade cesium. And the surmise is that it's going to be made into a dirty bomb. And the thing that kind of struck me was, he said, he's telling the FBI thing, he says, I thought that was just a urban legend. Now, the urban legends go back to the 90s when the internet was just getting going, and it was just exploding with stuff, conspiracy stuff, the Clinton stuff going on during that time.
Yeah.
So, but the original delete doc idea was coming out of that time too. Not the original The Doc, and the original The Doc story came out of the urban legend of the fact that it was their government agencies doing bad things,
Yeah.
And so that was the premise on that, and that was even before reenactors got added to the story later. But it had me thinking about the other stuff that was going on. There was another writer, he's recently deceased, called Jim, I believe his name is Jim Marrs. And Jim Marrs was a conspiracy writer in his own self. He's the one big thing he wrote about was the Fourth Reich, that the German leaders that survived took German gold to South America, not just Brazil or Argentina, but some other countries. But he wrote a couple forewords to this one book called Dr. Mary's Monkey by Edward T. Haslam. And if I can show just the title of this one. So this particular book is what I'm coming to find out is there's not so much as there's conspiracies as that there's cover-ups. And what this one is about, Dr. Mary's Monkey, was working with the polio virus in New Orleans. Out of Tulane University and Loyola Tulane. Now, Loyola was connected with Chicago University, the Loyola in Chicago, and then they got connected with Tulane with their science research down there. And in the Delta, there's a place called Monkey Island where they brought monkeys in on the port in order to use them for it.
No.
They didn't kill them or anything, but they did infect them, and they used their blood to develop the polio virus. And so the cover-up was that the polio virus gave some kids polio in the first viruses that they were using in the vaccines, the first vaccines. And this lady, they were working to correct that, and that was covered up. And this lady ends up getting killed, and then her death ends up being covered up. So here's another conspiracy thing, Dr. Mary's monkey. Another thing that's connected with that is just kind of crazy. There was a high school girl that got scholarships in science out of Florida, and her name was Judith Vary Baker. And she wrote this book about me and Lee. And Lee is Oswald when he was in New Orleans. And she ended up getting, she went to a college from Florida up in New York, but she was doing virus research, and she was killing mice and studying their brains, trying to find out about viruses that way. Well, the doctor down in New Orleans brought her down there on the promise that she would get a medical degree, where she worked with him down there on that virus. And that doctor was working with Dr. Mary, too. And so this girl ends up going to New Orleans, and that's where she met Lee Harvey Oswald in a job that she was working at a coffee house. Well, the coffee house was where Oswald, it was a cover job for him. And so the conspiracy always is, well, Oswald didn't really do it, But if he didn't do it, what's the cover-up? And even if he did do it, what's the cover-up? And both of those books were go back to me, the original conspiracy of our generation, which was, the Kennedy assassination and all that stuff since then.
I'm going to think of that one.
And to the researchers into this book, they got excerpts, Dr. Haslam got excerpts into Freedom of Information Act for the huge paper that was published. It was still kept from the public and on the Kennedy thing. But that's another story. So the Delete Doc book now, there's one of the things that is connecting in the Delete book. And the protagonist in this, she's a nurse, and that's the doc's wife. She retired as a nurse, but her specialty was infection control. And so she ends up being involved at another secret site working in viruses and the biomedical stuff. And so that is the crux of this sequel to the doc, to Delete Doc. And then, again, they get in trouble not just with the same company that he was originally in trouble with, called SRI, and that's not the Stanford Research Institute. That's another controversial thing Stanford was doing. SRI is fictitious. It's Safety Research Institute, where he was tortured with LSD type drug in the original book, if you recall.
Yeah.
So, but he and his wife get dragged back in. The Gettysburg reenactment. He was going to go to one of the policemen that they became friends with in the first story. He ends up reenacting with them, and the story ends up in Arkansas. But here's the other thing about the Gulf War in the 90s. It was huge about the construction and reconstruction companies that were going down there. Bechtel was the huge company that was going into Iraq and rebuilding Kuwait.
Oh.
You know, so Halliburton became the big company during the Gulf, not the past Gulf War, but after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
But both those companies had a lot of critics about, you know, what they were doing. There was other private companies that were doing military stuff, and even private companies doing military communications.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just stuff that isn't widely known, and maybe it is, but it became stuff that certain people in the public felt like the government shouldn't be doing that stuff, and so
I think that's been
and so
a lot of people.
but anyway, that's the genesis of what leads up to Delete Dot.
But this is sort of not really totally fiction, right? It's actual basic truth.
It's based on what I've picked up
Yeah.
from these other sources in my research. So
That's really clever.
so
But this really sounds interesting because, you know, all sorts of, there are so many things like that going on that we don't know about it.
well, what's the big word now on Fox? And this other, the deep state.
The deep state.
Yeah, and so what is the deep state? Well, it's all these government agencies either gone rogue and doing things they shouldn't be doing against private citizens or in other institutions. And so did the deep state come out of the 90s urban legend type stuff?
God, that sounds
You know.
so interesting. I'm not really up on politics too much. That's not my thing. But this really sounds like it'd be really interesting because it's got a little intrigue in it too, right?
Yeah, all that. Yeah.
Well, that's
So,
great.
last week, I was signing books at the Postal Annex on the Loop.
Mm-hmm.
It was raining in the morning, but it ended up being a good day for me there anyway. But I'm also doing the Postal Annex this Saturday, 9 o'clock,
Oh, good.
over at Willow and Knees, and I'll be there from 9 to 1, something like that, 4 hours. It may rain, but there's a canopy on that sidewalk. I'll be set up right in front of the store.
Oh, that's
So,
great. I haven't
and
seen
I-
anybody do that before in
Yeah.
that particular location.
Right. The same. I don't know if all the Postal Annex are owned, but the owner of this one is the same owner as the one on the Loop
Oh,
on Fig Garden Boulevard.
okay.
And so, which I've done 2 other events in the past, and last Saturday was a third there. It'll be the first time I'm doing on the other side of town.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's down from the McDonald's is on that corner, on the southeast corner, and this is on the wing down from the I think it's Giuseppe's Italian restaurant.
Okay, it shouldn't be too hard to find.
No, so it's on the Knees side.
Okay.
corner.
Well, I'm so excited about this book because I love intrigue, and I think that, you know, the idea coming from 2 other books and turning into this one, and different authors. I mean, it's not,
Yeah,
you know, you aren't stealing your stuff.
No, these
but,
people are supposed to be real. Some people,
right?
they're not believing everything that Judith Vary Baker has said about
Oh.
her affair with Lee. He was already split up from Marina, and
Well, I don't know. I don't get into their business. Anyway, thank you so much for coming to your new book, and I'm so glad to have it.
yeah, thanks
and
for
you
having
know,
me.
tell them again where you can get it. All sorts of places, right?
Yes, it's on Amazon. Oh, here's the thing too: the publisher, as a promo, if you're an ebook reader or Kindle reader, they're doing all of my book, all the ebooks for 99 cents.
Wow.
And so the other books are still at around $14.99 or whatever, $15 neighborhood.
Wow. Yeah, but that's great.
And a bulk of my readers now seem to be ebook readers instead of paper. But I still like the paper. I take them on.
Well, it's it's
I take them on the plane,
solid,
and they carry on the plane for reading,
yeah,
or travel.
Yeah. Okay, thank you again so
Well, thank you.
much for coming in, Tim.
Good to see you again.
And I'll keep coming when you're putting out these fabulous books.
Well, come on by Saturday morning over there if you're in the neighborhood.
If I'm not going to freeze to death, I might come.
I'll sign a book for you.
Oh, fantastic! Okay, that's the one at Willow.
Yeah, Willow and Knees.
Willow and Knees, because I know.
It's on the southeast corner.
Okay.
Or down from it.
Okay. Thank you, friend.
Okay, thank you.
Come back again.
I will. Thanks.
Okay. We'll be right back.